Hey, what's up guys? It's Bird here with another build video. Today we are going to be covering the 2-Kit Celestial Engineer PvP builds. I did this build a little while ago. This was actually the last build I put out for the old trait system, so I wanted to integrate it into the new specialization system because this is actually one of my favorite builds to play in PvP. One thing I want to talk about that I'm going to need your feedback on is I'm going to try to make this video a little bit shorter. Most of my build videos come out to be about 20 to 25 minutes, so I'm going to try to shorten that up and make it maybe like 15 minutes or so. So in the comments below, give me your feedback if you like the shorter version of the build video. Okay, so before we jump into the traits and the gear and everything, I want to go over the pros and cons so you know what you are getting yourself into with this build. So we are using Celestial gear in this build, and we're going to get really good power damage through our grenade kit and our toolkit. So we are using the two kit build. We're going to get a lot of good condition damage, especially with the changes to burning now that it stacks in intensity rather than length. So we're going to get a lot more burn damage out of that. And we do have a lot of burning, such as our blowtorch on our offhand pistol and the incendiary powder trait, which increases the amount of time burning you apply, how long it stays on, and it also applies burning on crit. We're also going to get a lot of confusion, and there have been confusion changes as well, where you are going to be doing damage with confusion whether the enemy is using actions or not, abilities or not. You're still going to do damage, but you're going to do a lot more damage when they're actually using abilities. So even if they stand still, they're still going to be taking damage from our confusion. So we're going to get a lot of confusion from our pry bar in our toolkit, and we also get a lot of confusion from our static shot from our main hand pistol. And one great thing about this build, we're going to get a lot of damage, the power damage and the condition damage, but this build also has great survivability. We are using the Celestial Amulet, so we're not giving up a ton of defense to get all of this damage, but along with our healing turret and our condition removal, I'm going to show you how to use the healing turret later in the video, but we have a lot of survivability in this build. So overall, I mean, I think it's a very strong build. Really thinking of cons for this build is actually quite difficult. The only thing I would say is like perhaps the learning curve, because there are some tricks that you need to learn to play this build really effectively. But we'll, later on in the build video, we'll go over all these tricks and I'll show you guys some things. So let's go into the gear, and then we'll get into the traits right after that. Okay, so let's jump into our gear first before we get into our traits. We are using dual pistol. From my last Celestial build, I leaned more towards power damage. We're using the rifle, but I'm using dual pistols this time. I love the changes to the condition damage, how they stack intensity, even the poison and the burning stacking intensity really adds a ton of condition damage to this build. So I'm really loving the dual pistol setup for this build. So dual pistols, again, we are using the Celestial Amulet, which gives us an even amount of stats for each certain type of stat. And if you're going to use this build in PvE, it would go the absolutely same thing. I mean, getting Celestial gear really sucks in PvE, so you might just want to mix and match some gear to kind of get even numbers. For the runes, we're using Rune of Holbrack. This is going to give us more power, and it's going to give us might duration and also give us might when we are struck in combat. But the great thing I love about this Rune of Holbrack over Rune of Strength is that you get the minus 20% condition duration applied to you, so that's going to add to our survivability in this build. For our sigils, Sigil of Intelligence is very important because we can switch to the toolkit. Our Sigil of Intelligence, your next 3 attacks after swapping to this weapon while in combat have a 100% critical chance. So if we switch to the toolkit while we're in combat, that means our pry bar has a 100% chance to crit, and it's going to do a lot of power damage as well as add 5 stacks of confusion. And the same thing, if you switch to a kit, you could use your grenade barrage where you throw several grenades at once. If this thing is critting, it's going to do a ton of damage. So Sigil of Intelligence, a really, really nice sigil to have in this build. And then the Sigil of Battle, since we're going to be switching kits a lot, you're going to get the 2 stacks of might every 9 seconds for 20 seconds. So that's going to add on to some of the might abilities, might gain that we get. So those are the equipment: Celestial Amulet, Rune of Holbrack, dual pistols with the Sigil of Intelligence and Sigil of Battle. Let's jump into the traits. First, the first trait line is explosives. We have Evasive Powder Keg, creates a bomb when you dodge. Grenadier, they changed this a little bit. Now engineers have, by default, in their grenade kit, they throw 3 grenades. So that's no longer in the Grenadier trait. But it increases the throw velocity of your grenades, and it increases the blast radius of your grenades. So it's going to be a little bit easier to hit. Then we have Steel Pack Powder. Explosions cause vulnerability, so whenever we cast our grenades, we are going to be applying vulnerability. Shaped Charge, deal more damage to targets with vulnerability, so it's a 5% damage. Basically, it's a permanent 5% damage to increase to whoever we're fighting. And then Explosive Powder, improves damage from explosions. Turrets explode and knock back foes when destroyed. So that's a 10% damage on all of our explosions. Then we have Shrapnel. Explosions have a chance to cripple and cause bleeding. So applying that cripple to our enemies is a very good thing. It's going to help us kite around a little bit. And if they're crippled, it'll make it easier for us to hit with our other grenades. And it has a 15% chance to apply 16 seconds of bleeding. The next trait line is Firearms. We have Sharpshooter. Critical hits have a chance to cause bleeding. So that's more bleeding that we're going to be able to stack up. Chemical Rounds, your pistol skills have increased condition duration, and that's a 50% duration, and that's going to really help with our blowtorch. You can see on my blowtorch, the burning has a 10-second duration. And then we have Hematic Focus. You have increased chance to critically strike against bleeding foes. So we basically, again, have like a permanent 10% critical chance increase to whoever we're fighting because of a Sharpshooter and because of Shrapnel as well. The Pinpoint Distribution, you gain condition damage based on your precision, and since we're using the Celestial Amulet, we do have a decent amount of precision, which is in turn going to give us more condition damage. Serrated Steel, bleeding you cause lasts longer, so we are going to be able to really stack up that bleeding along with our burning and our confusion and things like that. And then Incendiary Powder, I mentioned this in the intro, but the burning you apply lasts longer, and your critical hits inflict burning. So you have a 33% chance. That's 33% duration increase. But when you crit, you inflict burning, 2 stacks of burning for 5.25 seconds, and that's on a 10-second cooldown. So our last one is Alchemy. I was messing around with this last one. I used to. Which one did I have? I had tools at first to buff up our toolkit abilities, but what I had noticed was I was a little bit squishy and I felt like I was dying a little too quickly. So I went into Alchemy to get a lot more defense, a lot more survivability for this build. So Hidden Flask, you drink an elixir B when struck while below 75% health. That gives you Fury, Might, Retaliation, and Swiftness, and it removes 1 condition. Protection Injection, gain protection whenever you are disabled. So you get 3.5 seconds of protection on a 5-second cooldown whenever you are disabled. Transmute, incoming conditions have a chance to convert into boons. That's on a 15-second cooldown, so that's 1 condition converted into a boon every 15 seconds. Then Backpack Regenerator, regenerate health every second when using a kit, and we are in our kits a lot, so we'll be getting that health regen. Alchemical Tinctures, throwing or consuming elixirs removes conditions from those affected. Your boon duration is increased. So that's why our Hidden Flask, when we receive Hidden Flask, we're removing 1 condition. That's because of this trait here. And then the last one, Iron Blooded, incoming damage is reduced for each boon you have. Honestly, I wasn't too thrilled with the other ones. I mean, HGH is a good trait, but I'm not using any elixirs other than Elixir S. So I really didn't think that would be... I don't know. I just wasn't really... I don't think the build is set up to use HGH. So I went with Iron Blooded because we'll get quite a few boons, and we'll just have more survivability that'll decrease the damage that we're receiving. So those are the traits that I have decided on, and I've really liked so far, just playing around in PvP. And let's jump into our skills, and then we'll go into some of the tricks for the build. For our pistol skills, our number 1, Fragmentation Shot, which will apply bleeding. And remember, for our traits, if we get a crit, we apply bleeding as well. So we'll be able to stack up a decent amount of bleeding with just our auto attack. And that's our incendiary powder as well, applying the burning. We also have poison dart volley, and you can see now that the poison stacks in intensity rather than just length, so our poison is going to be doing more damage. It doesn't affect the healing rate applied to the target, just the poison damage. Then we have static shot, which applies blindness and confusion. And again, our confusion will do damage, as you can see, to the golems without them doing anything. But if that was a player and they were using their actions or their abilities, then they would be taking extra damage. Then we have blowtorch. Blowtorch does damage depending on how close you are to the target. So you can see the closer you are to the target, the more damage you're going to be doing. So when you want to use your blowtorch, you want to be standing fairly close to the target. That way you apply your stacks of burning, and you're going to be doing more damage with that burning. And then we have our 5, which is our CC, which is glue shot, and that applies an immobilize and a cripple as well. So you could use your glue shot first, which will just make it easier to hit with your other abilities. For our healing skill, we're using healing turret. I will talk about this a little bit later. Then we have our grenade kit. And remember, all of our explosives apply vulnerability, so this applies to all of our grenades. For our number 1, it's just our regular grenade, just does damage with the vulnerability. Then our number 2 stacks up bleeding, and again, vulnerability. Our number 3 is AoE blind for anybody that it hits. Our number 4 is a chill. And then our number 5, this one actually was changed in the patch. This one used to put down a poison field and it would pulse. And every time it pulsed and somebody was standing in the field, then they would take poison damage. But now it actually just applies all the poison once it hits the targets. So there's no more poison field that this puts down. It just immediately applies all of the poison. For our toolkit, we have our auto attack, which is a 3 chain. Applies a lot of cripple on the target. You can see that. I used it twice, then we got about 6 seconds of cripple on the target. Then our number 2, which also applies cripple, but also applies bleeding. This is box of nails. We put it down wherever we are. So this is a skill I like to use. If somebody's chasing me, I'll throw this down, or I'll throw this down on a point, just so people are crippled, and it makes it easier to hit with your grenades and things like that. Then our number 3 is pry bar. This does a lot of power damage, and it also here, let me switch back to get my sigil of intelligence. It does a lot of power damage, and it also applies 5 stacks of confusion as well. So between the pry bar and our static shot on our pistols, we can get quite a bit of confusion going on targets. Then we have gear shield. This is really important if you're starting to get focused or taking too much damage. Make sure you use your gear shield. And then we have magnet, which pulls the target to you, and I'll be talking about this skill later as well, because you can combo that with other skills that we have. Then we have Elixir S. Drink Elixir S to shrink yourself, recover from stun. So it's a stun breaker, and you evade all attacks for 3 seconds. And it also removes a condition because it is an elixir. Now our supply crate has changed a bit. Let's go over here. If we throw our supply crate down, you will notice that there are no more medkits there. Where our medkits are at is the new tool belt skill that they give us, which will be tied to your elite skill. And this drops all of the medkits. So you can choose whether you want the turrets or you actually want the medkits, which actually I find that very interesting. Now for our tool belt skills, we have Regenerating Mist. Release a mist of healing liquid to regenerate nearby allies. So we could use that to get some regen going. And then Grenade Barrage. This is one of our hard-hitting abilities. It throws 6 grenades. Let's see, let me get my Sigil of Intelligence on. Then I can use my Grenade Barrage. And you can see it did quite a bit of damage, and all the conditions it applies as well from our traits. Then we have Throw Wrench, applies vulnerability and a cripple as well. You throw it, and it's kind of like a boomerang. It comes back to you, so you can hit multiple targets that way. And then Toss Elixir S from our Elixir S here, which will put us in invisibility, and it also removes a condition, since it is considered an elixir skill. So those are our skills. Let's go into some of the skills in more detail, and I'll give you a couple of little tricks that you can use with this build. Okay, let's talk about the healing turret, and then we'll talk about a combo that you can pull off in your toolkit. But I like talking about the healing turret because sometimes people new to engineers, they don't really understand it. So when you put your healing turret down, it does the top skill. You deploy a turret that heals you briefly, then regenerates you and your allies. Then you can reuse the same skill, and it uses a cleansing burst, which overcharges your healing turret, supplying a burst of healing, so you get the 2800 healing, and gives you regen, and you remove 2 conditions. So if you summon your healing turret and you use cleansing burst right away, you're getting 5600 healing, and you're removing 2 conditions, and you're getting the regen as well. Now what cleansing burst does is it also gives you, it puts down a water field, and whenever you have a turret down, you can use on your tool belt skill, like this regenerating mist will turn into explode your turret. And whenever you explode a turret, it becomes a blast finisher. So whenever you use a blast finisher inside of a water field, you get even more healing. So what you want to do when you use your healing turret is you want to spam it. So you put it down and spam it so your cleansing burst pops off right away. What happens if you don't spam it, the healing turret like starts acting up again, and then you have to wait maybe 3 seconds, I think it is, before you can actually blow it up and get the extra healing. So when you put your healing turret down, you want to use your cleansing burst immediately and then just blow it up right away. So you just keep spamming it, and when you see that water shoot out, you can blow up your healing turret, and then you also get the area healing from the blast finisher inside of the water field. So that's basically how you use your healing turret. If you get fancier, you can use even more. Use even more blast finishers inside that water field that comes out. But if you're new to engineer, I would say just stick with that. Just spam your healing turret until you see that water come out, then blow it up, and you'll get a ton of healing from that, and condition removal as well. Now the second thing I want to show you is the combo that you could do with your toolkit, and you can really use this to do a lot of damage. We have on our number 5 the magnet, pull your target to you, and this has a 1 1/4 second cast time. Now while you're casting it, you can actually switch out of your kit, or you could do other things. So there's a couple things you could do. One, you could use your magnet, and when the target gets to you, you can use your pry bar, which is totally okay. You're gonna do a lot of damage that way. Or you could also use your magnet, and while the cast time or the cast bar is going, you can hop into your grenade kit and start throwing grenades at your feet, because by the time they get to you, the grenades will like just be hitting. It's a really good combo. The timing is pretty much perfect on it. So I'll use the magnet, switch to my grenade kit, and I'll throw a grenade down. So if that was a player, he would have been sitting right there just because it's a gauntlet with back. But that's one of the combos that I use all the time. So you want to really make sure that you use your magnet properly and use it wisely. Make sure you're not, people could dodge it, which kind of sucks, and then it goes on its 25-second cooldown. But as long as you're paying attention, you can usually get that combo off. And it's a very, very strong combo. So anyway, that's about it as far as the tips I wanted to give, the healing turret and the toolkit. Remember to use your Sigil of Intelligence properly. So when you use your Sigil of Intelligence, you swap to a kit, you get that intelligence, you can use your grenade barrage, or when you switch and get the intelligence, use your pry bar. Make sure you're using your really hard hitting abilities when you get that Sigil of Intelligence down. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching this build video. This is a build that I've always enjoyed in PvP, and I wanted to integrate it over to the new specialization system, and I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I will see you guys next time.